So this week, I honestly couldn't even draw a straight line. None of my boxes worked, the perspective was off, and every single one of my mannequins was just a little bit wonky. And honestly, it kind of felt like I didn't learn anything for a while, and I swear to God, it felt like I was getting worse. But by the end of the week, things started to click. I've been teaching myself to draw for about 18 months now, and I'm starting to move into trying to rotate figures and build them in space, which means understanding the torso and the limbs, and how that body fits together with just boxes and cylinders. So I put my teacher hat on and structure my learning in a way that makes sense when you are trying to learn a new skill, which means always starting with a warm-up. But before getting into those mannequins, boxes, fucking boxes. But it's not just about drawing the box and hoping for the best. It's about practicing what you're actually going to implement. Thinking about your lines, thinking about the perspective. And immediately I ran into problems because I couldn't get my lines to behave. My perspective was all over the place. But that's okay, because this is just part of getting started. And I'd already identified problems that I really needed to focus on when I went into my actual learning. This was the challenge that I'd set up for myself. Take a reference, mannequinize it, and then rotate the mannequin in space. Then try and draw the mannequin from imagination. And then finally, place a few mannequins into space using just my imagination. Sounds small, but it needs to be small, and it needs to be focused. When you set a goal, you need to know exactly what you are trying to achieve. So to begin with, I found a mannequin that I actually wanted to replicate, but I had a rule. You have to finish the drawings that you start, even when they sucked. And fuck me, a lot of them sucked. Because the only way to fix it is to figure out what went wrong. So I started drawing some poses twice, sometimes 3 times. I'd stand up and I'd use my own body to act out the pose. Sometimes I asked my wife to do the pose. Anything to help me understand the perspective and what I was missing. And I stopped trying to make the drawings match the reference perfectly. Instead, I just let it inspire the pose. And honestly, there were days where I felt like I got worse. My lines sucked, everything was just off. So I had to stop and just take a breath. By midweek, things started to make a little bit more sense. The forms were still messy, but I could feel the construction. I started to see how I could turn the figure in space. Not just copy the shapes, but actually rotate them. And every single mistake, that became part of the next warm-up. If I couldn't draw vertical lines, that was the warm-up. Struggling with tilts, or the perspective was off, those were things that I stored in my brain, wrote them down, and made sure that I addressed the next day. To make sure the feedback is effective, you need to give it immediately and you need to apply it straight away to see improvement. But there were some really big breakthroughs and moments that really helped things stick for me. I learned that drawing is 95% problem solving. I spent way too long on some boxes, just trying to figure out which way they moved and which way they tilted. And if something wasn't working, I'd go smaller. I'd strip it back and I'd draw just the torso, or just one arm, or just one box. Break it into chunks and solve the tiny problems. And it's okay to get really messy. Start sketchy to find the forms and then refine it. But always finish the drawing and actually review it. And most importantly, you need to fix the errors. Don't just move on, redraw that pose. Now, this definitely wasn't my cleanest week of work, but it might have been one of the most important, because I finally started to think like a builder, not just a copier. And I started to think like an artist. I started to think like a real learner. And I spent a full week with the sole focus, and the results speak for themselves. Next week, I'm going to tackle some dynamic poses because these boys look stiff. I'm going to look at leaning, jumping, and twisting, all from imagination, and we're going to see if I can actually improve. If you're learning to draw, to remember this. I think the biggest takeaway is to finish your drawings. Let your mistakes teach you, and if it's not working, don't quit, just go smaller. See you next week.